This particular episode is going to be interactive, so if you want to play along, you're going to need to have the following available. First, you're going to need a game controller, preferably an Xbox or a PlayStation-style controller. You're going to need one shot glass, some tape that's not going to remove skin, so something like medical tape or maybe some blue painter's tape or something like that, and possibly one very large smartphone. Now, if you want to pause the video and grab all these things, go ahead and do that, but if you don't want to play along, that's perfectly okay. You're just going to miss out on the audience participation. Just be lucky, I still don't have fishnets. Well, last episode I promised I'd tell you what happened to my hand, so let's start there. I took up a contest challenge to ride a bicycle 500 kilometers in 8 days, and I felt up to it. Day 1 of the challenge, not even 5 kilometers into the first ride, this happened. You see, the front tire has this warp in it, and literally there was no rubber on the pavement when I made that turn, and I slammed pretty hard, and at the time I knew it was bad.
I mean, I've broken my hand before, and it hurts about that much.
So the end result is actually bruised my ribs from about here to here, because I landed on my water line, and yeah, it's been several weeks and it still hurts to breathe a lot of times. But yeah, the big one is I broke my hand. Broke the bone right about here. It's about a 4 to 6 week injury. It should be in a cast, but I weaseled my way out of one. Yeah. So because of this, I'm off the bike, and I figured, you know, now's a good time to catch up on all those old video games that I've been meaning to play, just haven't had a chance to. Yeah, problem. Here's where we begin the interactive part of the show. First, I want you to pause the video, fire up any video game that you play that requires a controller, and then play it for a minute or two. No big deal, right? Now you're going to simulate my situation. I want you to take the shot glass and tape it to the inside of your dominant hand just under your knuckles. Now tape the phone under your wrist, kind of like this. Now try to play the same game. Not so easy, is it? Without the ability to bend your wrist or use all your fingers, playing most video games is not easy, and for that matter, neither is doing most anything else. That isn't to say that it can't be done. I've been playing a lot of Rocket League because that's one thing I can play, and at the very core, you only need to do 2 things: gas and steer. You're not the MVP of the games, of course, but you can play. And with some creative button remapping, you can do a little bit more. I've actually adapted my old technique for playing on NES controllers because my hands have always been way too big for NES controllers, so when I play, I have to overhand it like this. So I've just kind of adapted that to my Xbox controller. It's a little unwieldy, but at least I can play with the blunt ninja claw of doom. Yeah, but you see, this whole thing got me thinking, because for me, this is an inconvenience. In a couple weeks, this is going to be off. I hope. But for some people, not so much. There's something that gamers love to say a lot, and they say anyone can do it, but can they? Really? I want you to think about this for a moment. Most of the games you play all the time, how many of those games could you play with only using one hand? Or even without using a couple of your fingers? How about without any fine control of a mouse or dual sticks? The list is actually kind of slim when you think about it. So we enter the world of adaptive technology. A lot of people are working to bring video games to people with disabilities, and there's a lot of levels to this, and I know I'm going to miss a bunch, so my goal here is to kind of just make you aware of these things. Okay, hang on. I apologize now because this is a monstrously huge topic to kind of tackle in one episode. Every single one of these things could probably be its own episode entirely, so yeah, we're doing broad brush coverage, and as usual, I'm going to encourage you to do your own research if something here tickles your fancy. Alright? Okay. Let's start on the software end of things. Let's first talk about adaptive games. There's a lot of indie devs that are making some pretty engaging content made to be played with minimal input. Strange Attractors by Ominous Development was made for a one-switch competition, and its sequel only uses 2 buttons, and frankly, it's amazing what you can do with literally only 2 inputs. I also found this game called Blindscape, and it's available on mobile platforms, and it takes place entirely in audio.
I never thought I'd see the day where opening a door constituted a major victory. Not for someone who was the lead architect on the new government complex, which included the courthouse where they sentenced me.
I find the concept just fascinating, really. It's a visit into what for most of us is an alien world. But what's interesting to me is how many mainstream games don't even acknowledge the basics. And I mean, let's be fair, they really can't. They market games to the average gamer who has no physical limitations, but that said, a lot of current gen games don't even allow you to remap the buttons. This is kind of important to helping disabled gamers out. And if you wanted to do something more pedestrian, a lot of games don't even have colorblind options. I mean, I found one for World of Tanks, but it's a player mod and not something from Wargaming. Then of course there's the hardware end of things, and I hope you still got your controller out because you're going to help me do one more experiment, so play along at home. So grab the controller with one hand and actually try to play any game in your library one-handed. You might try operating the other stick with your elbow, your face, a table, a chair, anything that you can reach. The point is that it's not easy. So several people have been working on making adaptive controllers. Now Ben Heck, he hand makes these adaptive controllers for the Xbox One. He used to do them for the 360 and the PS3 as well, but not really any longer. But when you look at the design, it's very wonderfully elegant in its solutions.
The right stick you push against your knee. Oh, excuse my messy work pants. So you push up to go up, down to go down, left and right.
We can go a little bit further too. There's a product called the Quad Stick. There's several like it, but I'm going to focus on this one. It's a game controller for quadriplegics. All of the game inputs are from this mouth controller, and with this kind of a thing, every game in the library is playable. On the Quad Stick site, there's a playthrough video of Tomb Raider, and if you didn't see the inset shot of the player, you would never know that he's disabled. And actually, watching this guy play Rocket League, it's kind of humbling, because he's competing with regular players on their field with this technology, and no one even knows. There's also gamers like No Hands Ken. He plays World of Warcraft. He uses a Joust, which is a mouth-controlled mouse that instead of a gamepad. He live streams all the time, and if you can, go watch him play. He's really damn good. You know, I keep saying this, but in the virtual world, results matter. And it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you are. If you can play, we want you to come play. And devices like these actually help people from all walks of life play these games that we all enjoy. But I still think that game devs need to do their part too. I'm not saying that game companies need to change their games, that's just daft, but in this day and age of gaming, it really wouldn't take a lot to make the games a little more accessible. The first thing that game devs can do is they can make their games flexible. Button remapping is almost a standard feature now, but shockingly some games don't do it. Well, okay, you can remap the buttons on a PS4 and now the Xbox One at the core level, so it's a start at least. Software that has button remapping is so much easier on the end user though. But more importantly, I think game devs need to step up. As I said before, a colorblind mod was made by the community of World of Tanks, not by Wargaming themselves. It really wouldn't take much for the dev teams themselves to offer that stock within the game, or any game for that matter. Okay, granted, you can't plan around every individual case. You can, however, plan for the broadest ones, and not surprisingly, the indie devs are leading the way. On Twitter, I asked for some help, and I got it in the form of a response from Ian Hamilton about the Global Game Jam 16 stuff. Think of it as like a marathon game creation session. Game Jam 16 includes diversifiers, which are voluntary but they add flavor to the game, and many of them make games accessible to disabled people. Stuff like having a diversifier that has a game with no written or spoken words, games designed around a specific non-gaming controller, or games designed to be played one-handed. You know, that last one I can kind of relate to. But you know what would make a really fascinating game? If you could make a game that would put an able-bodied person into the life of a disabled person. I'm not entirely certain how you would do that and make the game engaging, but it'd be kind of fascinating to do, wouldn't it? There's one more thing I wanted to put into this show, but it felt really shoehorned in, so I'm going to put it here on the end. There's a lot of products out there, a lot of infomercial stuff people laugh at, say, oh, it's for fat, lazy Americans. But actually, a lot of that stuff I think is adaptive technology that's kind of marketed that way because it's the only way I would ever actually see the market. So before you laugh at infomercials for things like the Clapper or the Snuggie or the Easy Cracker, realize that a lot of these products might not be made for able-bodied people like you. And if you want to really get an appreciation for it, try making breakfast one-handed one day. You'll understand.